Brown and Root, or KBR, in PRM Energy Systems. They've completed the conceptual engineering and feasibility study, and we are now in the process of FEED and the engineering, procurement, and construction of the plant, which is being run by KBR's Center of Excellence for Bio-Based Chemicals and Fuels. We have signed a gasification agreement with PRM so that we have an exclusive right to use their gasifiers, and they're exclusive to us for plants in the U.S. and worldwide. The feedstock, as I mentioned, back in November we started conversations with several groups, and in February we signed a supply agreement with CF Industries. We're still going through the math, but we expect it to be about 50,000 tons of trees a year that will not be burned in Hardee County. The next slide, please. This is the site. I know the last time that I presented to you all, I believe in January, we had acquired 40 acres. You can hit once more, please. The 40 acres for the first plant, which is in the southwest corner of County Road 663 is on the bottom of that slide. Since then, we've acquired 606 acres. We've worked with Kimberly Horn on the wetland mitigation to maximize the upland usage for the 606 acres. We're estimating about a little less than half of that is usable acreage, and our intention is to build a rail spur through that property ultimately so that we can provide acreage to other companies that are looking to relocate existing or new facilities to the area. The next site. This is what I think a lot of you are accustomed to seeing at various times of the year where burnings occur. They're still running the analysis, but we are expecting to reduce the carbon emissions by 50 to 75% or more from the burning of trees. And this is what we produce. One more time. 46% nitrogen granular urea. It is a standard product in the fertilizer industry. It's not too accustomed to the citrus crop because if it's not applied properly, it can be damaging to the crop. And we are going through exercises with United Suppliers and locals to educate the market on how this can be used for the local fertilizer or agricultural market. The next slide. And I'll let Ernie, our engineers, take over from here with the timeline.
Good afternoon. Sorry, but this schedule is not super precise, but it highlights an issue that we want to talk about a little bit. And there's a lot more detail that goes behind this schedule that we didn't want to show. And the reason that it's not super precise is because the engineering is ongoing, and engineering being what it is, there's a lot of iterative steps that goes along with design, as you can imagine, designing and building a urea plant. And so what I'd like to do is to communicate as much as I can that what dates are important and why it's important that we discuss the rail spur. You'll notice at the end of the second quarter we have a milestone called EPC. That's Engineer, Procure, and Construct. That's when we expect to get KBR on contract for EPC. About 2 seconds after that contract is signed, money gets released to the major subcontractors like Stanley Clark, who's going to build the urea plant for us, the urea portion of the plant. Other major things that are going to happen are the wood yard, the ammonia plant, the control systems. All those major pieces of hardware that need to get final designed are going to start work and then go through the manufacturing and purchasing stage and then final construction stage. You'll notice that we identified the rail spur down here with Kimberly Horn and KBR working over the next several months on plant location, where the docks are going to be, all the surveys that need to happen. So that work is happening in the very short term. Then we move over to the manufacturing phase, the manufacturing and purchasing phase, and you'll notice that there's significant overlap between the engineering and the manufacturing phase. And the reason for that is that we're trying to accelerate this program as fast as possible. So it's not a normal project in which you finish all of the engineering and then you manufacture and procure and then you construct. We're not doing it that way. So the way that we're working with KBR is that as things are finished with design, they immediately become they move over to the purchasing department, they get manufactured, and then sent to the plant. And so we're trying to accelerate deliveries as much as possible, and that's why that overlap occurs. And you can see with the wood yard, we're allowing about 9 months of manufacturing for a wood yard. And the wood yard we bring up because that's the first piece of equipment that we believe we're going to be delivering on site. STAMI carbon, I bring that up because that right now, to the best of our knowledge, is the longest lead time piece of equipment. It's very large, very complex part of our process. The rail spur down at the bottom of the manufacturing and purchasing side, we're allowing 2 months for specific design of the rail spur, followed up by about 4 months of permitting. And so we think that by the first quarter of, by the start of the fourth quarter of this year, we should be done with permitting of the rail spur. And so moving on to the construction phase, you'll see that the wood yard starts getting delivered in the start of the second quarter of 2014. And as you can see, the rail spur, if you allow 9 months of construction, wouldn't get done until into the third quarter of 2014. And so you can see that we're about 4 months or so, we think, out of bed between when the first large piece of equipment starts running and when the rail spur is going to be completed. And that becomes an issue. Go to the next slide. What this slide shows is that it's an excerpt out of the feasibility study that KBR completed for us in January of this year. And in the section for constructability, specifically they call out certain things, certain risk items that we need to be concerned about, and I'll read the pertinent section. A complete analysis will be undertaken during the next phase of the project when a more complete understanding of the vessel and equipment sizing is established. There are several constraints at this site. And I won't read the whole next couple of paragraphs, but I certainly want to highlight the ones that I circled. The current site has limited road and rail access. And the final bullet, which is, there is no rail spur to the site which would have to be in place for rail transport of equipment. The rail transport option allows shipment of longer and heavier loads. And that's important because a lot of our equipment is going to be big. And so if we can get that rail spur accelerated in time, it's certainly going to help us move heavy, large equipment to the site. Next slide. Along with just the rail spur, there are other challenges with this site. And what we're trying to show here with this slide is that the plant locations, the specific plant location has gone through many, many iterations with KBR. This picture that you see at the top left-hand corner is one that was completed by CJ Bridges when they were doing their little simulation of where they thought the plant was going to go and then how to design the rail spur into the property. The one down at the left-hand corner is what was completed for the feasibility report. That's what finally went in. And the one on the right-hand side is what Kimley Horn submitted for the construction plan. And so you can see that the plant location is in a different place and a different configuration in every single one. And that's why KBR needs to start work, like right now, on plant location, where the dock is going to go, where the conveyor systems are going to go from the rail dock to the rail spur. Next slide. What we tried to show on the slide, you can just keep on going until the end. What we're showing you here is what we believe that the total cost of the rail spur is going to be at this time. We try to break it out by the major subs, KBR, Kimley Horn, and CJ Bridges being the top three. KBR gave us an estimate of almost $750,000 to complete what they have to do, plus $200,000 for their subs. Kimley Horn, so far they've invoiced us $128,000. The rail projection for completion is $104,000 from their side, and that's for civil engineering and permitting. And then CJ Bridges, who hasn't really started any work yet, has given us a projected estimate of about a little over $1 million, with $150,000 to $200,000 of that in addition for CSX. And so you can see that we've paid so far about $651,000 in hard costs so far, and for the rail spur about well over $2 million projected to go.
I didn't see anything in reference to MO now?
Yeah, that's right.
Have you had any discussions with CSX? Are they agreeable to grant you rights to their railroad?
They are. When we started,
It's not, I haven't seen anything on it.
okay, it wasn't up there, but CJ Bridges was one of the construction companies that they recommended we contact. And Paula Consulting is a consultant that works with CSX. They've been out there with CSX and the Florida Department of Transportation, I don't know, what was it, 3 months, 4 months ago? Just before the end of the year, where they went out and they approved with the FDOT the process of cutting County Road 663 and the process of moving it across. For example, making sure that our process agrees to the standards for CSX and the FDOT. I'll walk you through this slide real quick. From the tax-free bond perspective, you go through a process where you get a legal opinion that dictates how much of the bond can be spent on what, and they call it good money versus bad money. So the lawyers and the investment bankers can't charge 52% of a tax-free bond and go home. There's criteria for what the funds can be spent on, and they call that good money, which is on the tax-free bonds from where you start with the solid waste biomass, which is trees in our case, up until the point that you have a sellable product. And the first sellable product is the urea fertilizer that we produce. So the bond will fund the plant, the equipment, the wood yard, and the land. The bond funds cannot go towards purchasing urea storage equipment, the loading area, the warehouse, or the rail. All of that is funds spent on items that are after the urea is produced. And by IRS regulations, we cannot spend tax-free bond money on that. To the next slide. Based upon this, which is an analysis that's been completed in the last month, we are recommending or requesting that the IDA amend the award that was issued to release the funds for the rail spur on a reimbursement basis, as has always been the case, for hard costs, not soft costs. And the reasons being are as follows. We feel that it would be detrimental to tie the grant release to the bond closure because that process, as Ernie indicated, we need the rail spur in sooner than later in order to move the construction equipment in. We need the rail spur designed and built. It's not reimbursable by the bond, as I indicated on the other slide. Bionitrogen is agreeing to sign over the title for the use of the rail on a non-interference basis, which means whatever, if we use it on Mondays, the IDA has the authority to allocate Tuesday through Sunday. We will ensure the title transfer rights and secure the rail for future use. This creates an incentive for other non-bionitrogen entities to move to Hardee County. As we've agreed, we would provide monthly updates and we provide invoices as needed. The point here is that we are looking at the 600 acres as more than what we can consume or what we can use, and it has always been the understanding from our side that a rail spur should be built into a piece of property that can go beyond our needs, and that was the, I guess, the recommendation and advice since July that we've been focusing on. What we feel that this would do would give the IDA the ability to advance the conversations that they're having with other people. From a confidentiality basis, I can't disclose names, but there are people who have discussed with us or with the EDC about possibly relocating current or new business to the county, and we feel that this could be a very advantageous point for the IDA. And if you flip one more, just as exhibits, which we're happy to provide, these are the invoices, et cetera, that we have been paying and will continue to pay. And that concludes our presentation. Open up to questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? You understand what they're asking for? Remember, initially we had agreed to fund the $2 million on a pro rata basis as they received releases and funds.
Initially, we approved it. There was $2 million.
Right. But what was actually voted on and approved at that point was that we would release pro rata based on the release of the trustee who's releasing the funds from the bond and a pro rata basis as they were going there. So what they're requesting now is, if I understand this, is you want the $2 million now, not on a pro rata basis to be released as the trustee releases the funds from the bonds.
For reimbursable hard costs related to the rail spur, which you would have a legal right to. Yeah, you would have a legal right to use. Obviously, the IDA would have a legal right to allocate the use out to whoever they feel would benefit the county.
Any comment from the board members? Do you have any comments, Bill, on this?
I would say that this concerns me greatly. Not necessarily because of the $2 million to build the rail spur to the piece of property, but it opens, in essence, a Pandora's box. We have not, as a practice, ever provided money strictly to a private sector piece of property. I think if we do that, we need to have some rules in place that define how we're going to do it. If you recall, when we chose to do this way, this is the second time today that I've used this, but we provided a security interest in the IDA's investment for the citizens of Hardee County based on a $175 million investment. The ad valorem tax revenues generated by that investment alone made the IDA's investment in a rail spur, in essence, a no-brainer for the citizens of Hardee County. Didn't matter whether they ever produced a job or not, but when you start looking at 16 to 17 mills on that much investment, with or without partial tax abatement, the return to education alone would recoup what we were putting our money into. So our security interest in this instance was anticipation of sufficient ad valorem tax base increase to justify the investment. What they proffer to you today is for you to take full risk of this rail spur, and it could very easily be a rail spur to nowhere. I'm concerned about that because I don't have any way to answer to the public if we choose to do that. Secondly, the change in the dynamics of this project, I believe if we're going to do it properly, we should go back before the vetting group and vet this entire situation and determine whether or not this is a prudent path, a prudent way to make our decision. And then lastly, and I think Brian referred to it, but we made a presentation to the Economic Development Authority that our $1 million contribution was going to be tied to construction draws. That same decision was made by the EDA. They were very comfortable with us doing business in this manner and in this fashion. So if we are going to do that, I think unless you want to just provide half and allow them to go to the EDA separately, I think we should likewise go to the EDA and give them an opportunity to see if they want to participate if we're just going to upfront the money. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Any of the board members? Hold on a moment, please.
Are we still going to do a construction drawing, giving them?
That's not what they're asking for.
They just want money.
Yeah. Stephen?
I just wanted to respond to a few things. First, I think Pandora's box is open already. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I want you to elaborate on that.
No, I'm kidding. But anyway, I wanted to provide just a little different perspective on exactly how to conceptualize, because I think there's a little bit of, well, it makes you feel philosophical. I don't know. I mean, their comment is, their concern is that you're providing benefit to private property. And you know, the scope has changed. This is definitely not, you know, just a minor change in the funding mechanism. The technical changes to the grant award agreement are not that significant. I mean, you know, actually the verbiage is, but it's a change in focus from a complete change in focus. I don't want to appear that this is not a complete change in focus on the funding mechanism which we discussed last time around. So that anyway, it's clear. But this is essentially a focus on infrastructure and construction, as opposed to a soft commitment, commitment to soft funding, and just throwing the money in with the rest of the pool. And the security that is being offered for that is a grant ownership in the rail spur. So in many ways, it's not unlike, in fact, conceptually, it's the same as building a spec building in the Commerce Park. I mean, the IDA is not going to occupy that building, it's not going to own that building. it doesn't want that building. They're building it for somebody else to own and use, and there's, you maintain the control of the building so you can allocate the use of it to a private party to generate activity, economic activity. So in a lot of ways, it's not much different than that, and it's infrastructure that has, that definitely has a multiplier effect. So I understand the concern in how that, but essentially, I guess what we're offering, I think, is a betterment of the position. And what kind of security, if you're looking at the security standpoint, what kind of security that the IDA would be retaining in this funding mechanism. And I would suppose, as far as technicalities of draw requests and that kind of stuff, that definitely would be built into the equation of how the money is released.
But Stephen, won't your client still own the property the rail spur goes to? So I understand them saying, hey, you can use this, but it's still going to property that we have no control over. And that was the issue that was brought up in the last meeting when we discussed, is there some way that Hardee County can be represented in ownership of the property until the project is complete? And the response was that that wouldn't work for the bond, that they did not want us to have ownership in the property, and that's why we structured it the way we did. My opinion is, having use of a rail spur that is going into private property, which I think it's wonderful. They're not going to use all the acreage. They're going to look at trying to attract other people. I'm not trying to say that we discourage that, but there's not a lot of value there for us.
Well, I guess to respond to that a little bit, since we're talking about rail, I think it's a little maybe we're thinking of it in a different manner than other infrastructure, first response is that yes, it's private property, and there was a concern about the ownership and the ability to for the financing purposes of the control and ownership of property. That's only part of the answer, and the other response is it's private property, and that's sort of the economic model we operate under. And infrastructure is built to support private property. Every road goes to somebody's private property. Every sewer pipe ends up at somebody's private property, with the exception of public ownership of property, of course. So I understand what you're saying, and I think maybe the rail is sort of complicating a little bit because you're thinking of it, it's a little different and it's not the norm. But the purpose of infrastructure is to improve private property, is to deliver value to private property and make it worth more by interconnecting it to other private and public resources. So I understand what you're saying, and if that's your concern, I'm not arguing with you on whether that's a valid concern or not. I'm just saying that it isn't unusual or novel to think about infrastructure serving private property, because that's essentially what infrastructure is there for.
Stephen, I have no objection to trying to structure something here, but I can't see it happening in today's meeting, number one. Maybe the board wants to do that. If they do, great. Would your client be interested in providing a lien-free interest in that property in the event that their factory is never built, so that we can have an opportunity to recruit other users for the property to maintain the integrity, or to try to recoup the lost tax base in the event that your financing doesn't materialize? Because you're asking us now to take on risk in this project that we didn't have otherwise. If we could have a lien-free security interest in the property until such time that we replace ad valorem tax base, that may be a compromise that can be worked out over the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Are you talking, when you say property, you talking about the rail facilities?
I'm talking about the property that your client owns, the real estate.
600 plus acres.
Yes.
I'll let them respond to that, but I don't think that's going to work.
Well, a couple things. One, just to answer a couple questions. One, we're not asking for the $1 million blank check today. What we're asking for is reimbursement of fixed costs that have gone into this project related to the rail spur, and that can be dispersed as you all see fit on an invoice by invoice basis. That is our intention. Secondly, the contract is 1 and 1. The idea is that the IDA would approve what they can, which is $1 million, and recommend to the EDA to go the same route. With regards to the land, when we initially had the conversation and the project was approved and the grant was awarded, there was an issue with collateral. And as we have gone through this with the lawyers, that on the good money, bad money split, the initial plant will be on a portion of the 40 acres that were initially acquired. Only the portion related to the plant will be specific to the bond's collateral. So if they build the plant on 25 of the 40 acres, they will have 25 of those 40 acres. Since the rail spur is defined as non-tax-free bond funds needing to be used, good, bad money, the land associated with the rail spur cannot be part of that collateral pool. It has to be separate. So there is today, based upon the lawyer's definition of good versus bad money, the land associated with the rail spur, whatever that may be, would be and could be whatever sort of language you want to, whether it's a reverter clause or the rights to that land in the rail spur can be assigned. I don't think that's a problem. With regards to the full 600 acres, I think that would be problematic for several reasons. We're trying to start work on that property as far as environmental set-asides, as far as where we're going to relocate the collection of trees from CF Industries. And we can go down that path, but I think it would complicate things. I think the idea of basically assigning or allocating or reverting the land that the rail spur is on, I don't have a problem with. And the reason we're trying to do this is because we want to accelerate the construction, the jobs in Hardee County as quickly as possible. And based upon all of the work that's been done up until now, it is clear that the rail spur has to be detached and separate from the plant. And and the rail spur needs to be built so that we can move the equipment into the site. And if that takes 6 to 10 months, the sooner we start that, the sooner we can actually have everything out there and laid in slabs.
How does if we choose to not accelerate the payment for the rail spur, how is your project impacted? We have, I work at the Vandola plant right next to you guys. We brought in all our heavy equipment to own it and brought it up by heavy haul. A lot of our heavy equipment came in by rail as well. That was something we dealt with at that point. I know that's expensive, but I'm just trying to understand what the whole impact is if you have to offload the equipment and own it and bring it up by heavy haul versus having the rail spur on time.
I'm not sure, but if it's not in the millions, it's in the tens of millions of dollars of additional costs. And part of that also is we have to get the engineering and the design work done for the rail spur in order to build everything else around it. I would say it's a chicken and the egg, but you have to know where the rail spur is going to go in order to know what the plot plan of the plant is. For example, there's long lead time items that take 12 months. We can't order those until we know when the rail spur is going to be there. We can't have oversized loads waiting at facilities, charging us demurrage on a daily basis, waiting to see when the rail spur is done. So it would substantially impact, and it would basically, I would say, freeze or delay the project up until the point in time in which we get the funding for the rail spur.
Am I understanding that you cannot use the rail spur going into Ona, or the rail going into Ona and offload there and use heavy haul? That's just something that cannot be done?
Well, one, I'm not an engineer, so I better answer by other people. I think it can be done, but what I mentioned is it's an additional cost.
It's cost prohibitive?
Yes, it's cost prohibitive.
Again, if we choose not to fund it, what happens to the project then? Do you guys not have at this point the funding to proceed with the rail spur design, and without us accelerating payment? Does your project just stop?
Well, no, we do. We have this project. We have a project in Louisiana, and we're trying to move this project forward as quickly as we can. And one of the things to move it forward as quickly as we can is to accelerate the building of the rail spur. If not, the rail spur will come online as it comes online, and the funding of the $2 million would be dispersed as the grant was awarded. What I can tell you is I can't tell you when construction would start. I can't.
So you have money to fund the rail spur, but you don't have the means to accelerate the funding of the rail spur.
Correct. We spent over $500,000 in hard costs, plus office space, salaries, etc. So just related to this project, to the rails piece, there's about $500,000 that's been spent. we will not contract with, we are contracted with CJ Bridges, but we would not tell them to start that process of the $1 million until we knew we had that $1 million either committed or in the bank. So getting CJ Bridges to go out there and order rail ties and order crossings, all those things take long lead times to order. I can't tell you when it would start until we have the money in our hands to give us a timeline.
I may have a different understanding between hard cost and soft cost than you have.
Okay.
What do you define as hard cost?
Hard costs, I consider anything that develops the land for putting,
Moves dirt, physical stuff, not engineering.
engineering is a hard cost. It's not, okay. Then there's a lot of non-hard costs in our
Right,
project.
all the stuff you've done so far, engineering, in my book, is not hard cost. If we're gonna reimburse them, we need to reimburse on hard cost.
Yeah. There are 4 items up, there were 4 major suppliers or contractors that we had on there. CJ Bridges is solely hard cost. They don't do engineering. You give them a plot plan and they go buy the equipment to put it in the ground. KBR, I can't tell you what percentage is going to be engineering or hard cost because they do construction. Kimberly Horn is all.
All those things are hard costs.
Those are hard costs for me. I mean, nothing against Steven, but legal fees are soft. So,
They're always hard to pay.
they are, well, they're easy to get, they're hard to pay, right?
All costs.
Yes.
I've been excited about this project since it was first proposed, and a number of people have come to me over the last several months concerned about it, and which is fine. And one of the things that I've been able to assuage your fears is the draw schedule, and having $2 million was to be paid. And it gave a very, very comfortable feeling to me, and after I explained to a number of people, they felt the same way. This changed the whole dynamic. I agree with Mr. Lambert. I don't think this decision is going to be made today. It needs to go back for some negotiation and figure out a way to. I understand the problem. It's a definite problem. But taking a little time to work this out and see if you can't come back with a proposal that works for you and is acceptable to this board.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else on the board?
I'm just wondering why this wasn't asked first rather than second.
It was.
So the rail spur.
The rail spur, that was the initial intention of, back in July when we started the conversations of deciding on land. The initial concept.
I wasn't here then, so.
Okay. From July until November, the idea was the IDA didn't want to have partial projects. They wanted to have something that they could use if, worst case scenario, everything fell apart. They had a tangible asset that they could use to create jobs in Hardee County, and that was the rail spur. And the decision on this property was the county, well, the idea was the county didn't want to build a rail spur to one plant. The county wanted to build a rail spur to a large enough piece of property that could create multiple jobs in multiple companies. And for that reason, we chose to locate at this site to acquire 40 acres for our initial needs. And as things developed, we agreed to move and acquire all the acreage. So the initial concept was that the IDA would fund a rail spur, and the IDA would have the legal rights to that rail spur if, worst case scenario, things didn't materialize. And it was modified throughout the process because the board felt, as I understand, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, that they wanted to tie it to some milestones that were going to create jobs for the county. And one of those was to make sure that the plant was built. And there's been delays. We thought we were going to get approval from the governor in a 30 to 45 day period. It took 4 months, which is fine. We are trying to, at this point in the juncture, accelerate construction of the rail spur and accelerate jobs to Hardee County. And the fastest way we can do that is to look at going back and saying the IDA builds the rail spur, and the IDA will have the right to that rail spur if, in a worst case scenario, nothing materializes.
Thank you. Any Further comment from the board?
I was going to say that I agree with Commissioner Thompson. You know, I'm excited about the project. I'm excited about what you're trying to do. I don't know that this is the time that we can work out a negotiation. And I would, you know, certainly encourage something to be brought back that secures our interest a little bit better, because this does change what we approved quite dramatically. I don't know that what's being proffered is fitting the interest of the board. But, you know, we are so excited about the project and want to look for a way to, you know, work out the details. I just don't know that it can be negotiated in this setting.
You have a motion?
I would make a motion to authorize Bill to negotiate an agreement, Bill and Ken to negotiate an agreement with them. And if an emergency meeting needs to be called, you know, we appreciate fast. It's not always the speed we can operate at, but you know, if we would need to call an emergency meeting, we may need to do that.
With what latitude?
Well, to negotiate something to present back to the board. To present back.
Basically looking at establishing a collateral instrument that replaces a construction draw instrument.
I mean, I'd like a little bit of direction too. I think we're on the same page here is what we got to negotiate out, because so you know, we come back next month with the same thing we just said here. This is what we negotiated when we got to the same place, and y'all say, "What the heck y'all bring this here?"
We've got to make sure that the interests of the people of Hardee County are protected, and that whatever monies we spend at this juncture, a lot of facial expressions going out here. Whatever monies, no, sir, not right now. At the end of the meeting. Or do you just want to raise your hand and make some facial expressions?
No, I just wanted to say something right now.
Okay. At the end of the meeting, that's okay.
Well, you were big, bud.
We're debating the issue presently. We're not going to have any more outbursts. Thank you. Thank you. One of the things that you said, Brian, was that there was, you know, good money, bad money in the analogy that you made, and that some of the property may not be included in what was being included for the bond. Is there potential to allow us to have an ownership interest in that property and incorporate that in the rail spur so that we can ensure our ownership interest in the project?
Yes, I don't want to, the concept, yes, part of that would be conversations to be had about people who are looking to either acquire land to move properties out, plants out there, etc. But with regards to the property that the rail spur would be on, I think we would have no problem with regards to, you know, if in a bad case scenario, the rail spur and the land associated with that rail spur would be property of the IDA or the county. Is that what you're asking?
So how much property are we talking about?
I have no idea. There's ideas on the rail spur, which would be where it goes all the way up the side of the property, so you could envision the side of the property associated with County Road 663. But I think that's, and Steve and I talked about this, is that there needs to be a process where the engineers say this is where the rail spur is going to go, and that piece of property is yours. And the idea was that the IDA would be granted an easement for the entire acreage of the property so that you have access to the rail spur. We will be as accommodating as possible. I mean, I think our interests are all aligned to create jobs for the area, and if that means the rail spur is the IDA, the Hardee counties, then I think that's a situation that everybody would be comfortable living with.
I don't see a high likelihood of reaching an agreement under these circumstances. To me, we're only talking here about replacing risk. We basically have no risk the way the current agreement is structured, and even if we build a rail spur and we control the rail spur, we may be taking on a liability. I don't know that we want a rail spur and to have the incurred maintenance of a rail spur without a client. And I don't see anything that we've done today as a reasonable solution. I had proffered, I believe if we spend $2 million on a rail spur and we can have $2 million worth of real estate relative to the value of the rail spur to recoup our investment on with recruitment of additional clients down the road. And in essence, we're putting in infrastructure for an IDA-controlled industrial park. I'm willing to look at it from that perspective, but anything we do less than that, I think leaves us in a deficient position. And that's why I'm concerned about what you're asking me to do. I don't, we'll go sit down and arm wrestle and argue and have a good time at it, but I don't see us reaching a conclusion here. So,
Well, we've talked about this, and the board needs to make some kind of decision whether to table this right now, or make some motion to yay or nay, or make some motion to do whatever. We got other fish to fry here.
Chair, I'd like to withdraw my motion and make a motion that we table this issue until we can determine an acceptable solution.
We have a motion made and seconded to table this till we can work on an acceptable solution. Okay. Due to conflict. Donald Samuels. Any further discussion here? All in favor say aye. Opposed, same, pardon me? Yeah, I need to say one. All opposed, same side. Motion carries.
I previously provided you our project updates in writing last week. I won't go through all that with you today. That's all I have.
Financial reports.
Page one of your financials is the balance sheet for the EDC. And if you look up at the top, you will see that we have, as of February 28th, $31,744.51 in the bank. It was a very usual month for the EDC office itself. Payroll liabilities are listed there. And at the end of the month, we were left with the $31,000. If you flip over to the next page, page 2, it's your profit and loss. That details out what we took in over the month. We did bring in one draw from the EDA grant that the EDC received for its operating budget. We drew $45,000, and that did come in the month of February. And listed below that are the expenses incurred for the month in the operating budget of the EDC. It was a very typical month with our expenses totaling $22,093.18. The next pages list out your payroll summary as well as your general ledger that I won't go in detail with, but if you want to take a second to look over those, and if you have any questions about them, I'll certainly be able to answer those for you. If you don't have any questions, we'll go ahead and move on to the Industrial Development Authority financials, which start on page 12. And that's the balance sheet. If you'll take a minute just to briefly look over the balance sheet, starting at the top, we have our accounts listed: the Wauchula State Bank Mosaic account, the Wauchula State Bank sales account, and our newest account, which is the Mosaic disbursement account, which, as we spoke about last month, when we switched our banking over to consolidate our accounts for the Mosaic agreement into one bank and did the RFP for services for that, we're only allowed to make 6 transactions per month on that account without being charged a fee. And it's not just 6 checks, but 6 transactions. And since that's the account that we do disperse all of the Mosaic grant award draw requests out of, we are going over 6 disbursements per month because some of those are being paid directly to subcontractors. So we had to do another account. We had to open an additional account, which is called the Mosaic disbursement account. And so essentially what we'll be doing on a monthly basis is taking a draw from the regular Mosaic account and transferring it over into the disbursement account for whatever we need for that particular month to cover the draws. so that we're not exceeding the 6 transfers a month. So that's what that new account that's listed on your financials is all about. A couple of things that we should note on the financials for the IDA. If you flip over to page 13, which is the profit and loss, under the expense side, the 2 major expenses for the month were the continuum draw from the previous month in February, and then also under professional fees for contractor services, that $231,743.75 is comprised of pay applications that was paid out to Half Acre Construction for project management for the Tech River Technology Park, as well as PSN for the construction of those projects. And then the additional pages past that page, again, are your profit and loss details. If you have any particular questions on an item, I will be happy to entertain that. And if not, that concludes the financial report.
Any questions for the board about the financials? I'll entertain a motion then on EPC and IDA. I would not scan it.
Motion to accept the financial report as presented.
We have a motion to accept financials as presented on both EDC and IDA. And seconded. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. With our attorney Lee. Okay. All right. I'm going to turn this chair responsibility back over to Vanessa now.
This time we'll open for public comment again. In the interest of time, we are going to ask that you keep your remarks to 3 minutes and address the board with any questions or concerns that you have. Mr. Coleman, you've requested to be pre-authorized amount of time to speak, and we're going to permit you 3 minutes. Should the board want to hear from you additionally after that, they can request to allow you to continue speaking.
Okay, so what I'm doing now, don't start the clock, is the agenda item that I have, where I requested to be on the agenda to speak about a letter that I wrote about Chairman C. So this is not public comments. This is still in the meeting.
Mr. Coleman, you and I had this discussion prior to the meeting, that you were placed on the agenda under the public comment section. I understand that you requested an allotment of time in excess of 3 minutes. However, we are not going to open.
You are not going through that.
That's correct.
You personally, you're saying that, right? As chair.
As the chair of the meeting, we're gonna.
7-page.
We're gonna allow you.
I submitted is not worthy of more than 3 minutes on a critical issue.
Mr. Coleman, just like we would afford any citizen, we're going to allow you the opportunity to speak for your 3 minutes. How you choose to use that time is up to you. You and I had this discussion prior to the meeting.
Okay, so the first 3 minutes is on the agenda item, and then I have other things.
You have 3 minutes.
One more 3 minutes.
At this point, I'm going to start your time, and I'll ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Chairman C, I wrote you a letter quite a while ago. It was dated the 3rd of March, but it was before that we talked about back and forth. No one has discussed the Auditor General's findings. No one's mentioned I think it was a television show last night at 11 that you were on. No one's mentioned the Joint Legislative Audit Committee hearing. No one's mentioned the fact that the Board of County Commissioners has refused to discuss the Auditor General findings. The first, 6, 7, 8 of those findings directly relate to Chairman C and his activities and actions and inactions while a member of the IDA before and after becoming the chairman in September. There's an ongoing investigation, conflict of interest investigation. All of those Auditor General findings, the relationships with LifeSync, Continuum Labs, all of those things are delineated here as questions, 39 questions directed to you as the chairman on why you should remain on the IDA board. I'm suggesting that you resign. Now, I told Vanessa this morning that these are questions. A lot of them are inferences because I don't know, because no one answers any questions in this county. You can't get the truth or honest, straight answers. You only get 3 minutes to talk about all of this stuff, even though it took me 3, maybe 5 hours to put this together. That's the first thing. So I'm requesting that you resign or the board remove you. Second item. Revenue countdown clock. I just did it last night on March for Continuum Labs. They've spent $1,817,000 so far out of the $3 million in 6 months. The 6-month budget would be 1.5. They're already $317,000 over budget. For the remainder of the time, they only have $197,000 per month to spend between now and August when the money runs out. I asked your board to ask Mr. Bond these questions. They're simple questions. He gave us fluff. Every month he comes up here is some new vision. Concierge service. Do you know how labor intensive that would be? Who are you going to hire to answer the phone? This sounds like something ought to come out of Indonesia to tell people what their prescriptions are or when their next doctor's appointment is. Every month is another vision. There's no hard data. Everything he talks about is going to run this thing down the road another 6, 9, 12 months, 2 years. You don't have the money, he doesn't have the money. There will be a day soon where he can't make his payroll. Those 10 people, when you say he created 10 jobs, he created 0 jobs. Those are your jobs. They belong to you. You made those jobs, you're paying for them.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. That's your time.
I didn't hear.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Kirkland?
First, I will say you are breaking a lot of statutes, lady. And a whole stack of those statutes relate to involving the public, encouraging the public, and allowing them to put their opinions and grievances to you, in their opinion too, not for you. And there's a lot more than one that you're breaking. Okay? That's it on that. The thing you're running here, and I've noticed it for quite some time, I'll point my finger at the director, but the chairman's responsible to see that things happen like they're supposed to be. But y'all been having what I call a snake show in here. Every time. Stacking the deck. You get Mr. Bonds up here to mumble for 2 hours where nobody else can have time to talk. And when you're on an issue, if we can't address it then we got a great big list at the end. And most of those things I can address in 3 minutes. All I'm going to address them. But we cannot do it with you disrespecting the public, breaking the statutes, and it will not continue forever, I'll guarantee you. Now, this bio-nitrogen is up here. If you read 159, it clearly states you don't do business with people that are not financially able to take care of the infrastructure, maintenance, and all these things. The man just stood there and told you he spent $500,000 and he didn't have the money to take care of what he's doing. So that makes him void as a project by statute. You came to the Auditor General. You left there very lucky, but the man, from what I understood him saying, and if I'm wrong, it's because I understood him wrong, he said they broke the law, but we're just going to let it ride and come back in 18 months and do it again, and maybe they will have cleaned up their act. Are you going to wait till 17 months and 10 days to start cleaning it up? The statutes are available. You talk about having workshops. Find you an attorney that knows a little bit about the law other than 3 words. And study them. There's 159, 180, 189, 403 in particular defines a lot of things. It's really like grammar school on this stuff. And these statutes are guidelines. And if you just start working towards doing what the statute says, you certainly won't be having so much bitching out of me. So,
I'm not so sure of that, but thank you for your comments.
Okay.
That's your time. Yes.
First Center 652 County Road 665 owner. I love Hardee County and I love the farming county, and we're in a good, don't start my clock here. We're in a good family-oriented county. Okay, bionitrogen. I think the real spur is a red herring. We're looking at this red herring floating around in the pond, and we're not. Previously, there were statements made by Bion that this would be the first workable project in the world. And I asked specifically, if Hardee County is going to be the first in the whole wide world, and they said yes. And that's the big picture. And I'll let you deal with that because you have a manager that is ready for input and for output, but what's going on in the middle of the box, that's secret. But I will ask one more question. In the process, to my understanding, has approximately 24% ash and waste and carbon black. And where is that going to be transported or stored? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Any further comments?
Ken Lambert, 235 Terrell Road. I just want to make a couple of comments to you as a board today relative to this meeting and its contents. First of all, I want you to remember that pundits are a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. Leadership is hard. It is not easy. And I want to commend each and every one of you for changing the conversation in this county. If you look at the agenda items that were here today, we're talking about projects that most other counties with the type of economic situation we have would die for. If you look at a balanced portfolio, you have risk, high risk, low risk. You have every imaginable kind of industry. And I, for one, am tired of the people that have nothing to say but negative things, that want to drag down our people all the time. I would also tell you that I appreciate the fact that you tolerate jumping beans throughout your meeting. Because it isn't necessary, and it isn't appropriate, and it's bad decorum. Most importantly, thank you for your volunteer service and what you're doing. Because pundits are not going to control the future of my children. Thank you.
Yeah, I got a problem. Can I respond to that, please?
No, sir. I'm sorry. You've had your time.
Oh, my engineering degree is meaningless. My
No, I
25 years
did
with
not say
EPA
that.
is meaningless.
I did
I'm
not
a
say-
pundit and
Sir?
a jumping bean.
you didn't take 3 minutes.
That's all right. I'm a
Is there
jumping
any
bean.
further public comment? Yes, sir.
What do you do? Give your name, address?
Yes.
I'm Larry Davis, PO Box 668. Am I on TV?
Maybe.
I too would like to thank y'all. You got a tough deal. The problem is it cost us, I don't have a clue, maybe $20,000 to make a decision with all of the jumping beans and or whatever. And my qualifications is, look, I'm just an indigent beardless boy. I'm a Hardee County. But I'd like to make one, when I think about when, y'all mentioned several times about a railroad spur on private property. Well, when I think of railroad spurs on public property, I think of Amtrak. Why would the IDA really, if you put it on private property, we can, And why would you really want the property next to it? Control the rail spur, which you will. Anyhow, here would be my, I hadn't researched this or checked with my handlers. But supposing I got a group of investors, myself and others, and we guaranteed the $1 million expense that the IDA is going to spend, we would guarantee that you would, if BioWind went under, we would pay IDA, EDA $1 million. Then, and then also on the second spur first. Now, that's going to probably take a month and $5,000 worth of legal work.
Are you offering that?
I'm saying I'm going to be looking into it if y'all are receptive to something.
Well, my intention with the land as collateral was something to give us a security interest.
Well, you can, but I mean, you're opening up another can of worms, Bill.
But in that instance, well,
I can't give the land as collateral now, but I'm saying, let's say I came up with some investors, and we guaranteed the board that, you know, if things didn't work out in X number of time, whatever, for BioWind, then the railroad spur would be ours. It would be basically be guaranteed money. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. We appreciate you offering a solution.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I've got something here that I'd like to say here. This half acre, I got some questions about half acre. We haven't had any, there's work going on out there, but we haven't had any information like competitive bids and bid tabulation sheets and written recommendations to IDA board about things going on out there. Payroll records, copies of invoices to the board for payment to half acre, subcontractor invoices and documentation. I'm just wondering, are we going to start getting some of that? Or is that just, we're not going to go by the Florida statutes, or what's the deal here?
Bill, would you like to respond?
Sir.
Sarah?
We do receive, in the pay apps that Half Acre sends us every month, they do provide that detail that you're speaking of. They also provide us bid tabulation sheets. The whole point of us engaging into contract with Half Acre was for them to kind of handle all of those items for us. We are essentially utilizing them to take care of exactly what you're talking about. Gathering the bid sheets, gathering the cost estimation sheets. Now, they certainly provide all of those to us on a regular basis. Sometimes I get 3 and 4 a week, for our oversight and review as well. So we keep in constant communication. I speak with Greg, if not every day, every other day, regarding pay applications and bid tabulation sheets. Of course, if that's something that the board wants to have in their packets every month, you certainly have the right to do that, or if you want to come and have me go over them with you, I'll be more than happy to do that. But do rest assured, that we are receiving those and we do have them on file, and we are reviewing them on a regular basis to make sure that we're not only on track with the project, but we're on track with our budget and on track in making sure that we are actually going out for bid properly for each and every aspect of whatever project it is at the moment.
Okay, so you're saying that Florida statute does not require us as a board to vote on those things or not? Is that what you're saying?
Under the agreements that we have with Half Acre, we have hired them as our construction manager.
Sir, I'm talking about Florida statutes, not the agreement. If not, just tell me no and I'll hush.
To my knowledge, I have never been told that we fall under Florida statute, that the board has to review the bid tabulation sheets and approve those prior to the construction manager actually awarding that particular bid.
Okay, I thought they were supposed to bring to us like bids for subcontract, even though I know it would be after the fact, because you can't stop the construction. I mean, I understand that, but after the fact, he could say, all right, we got these 3 bids, we picked this one because of, and that's all I'm asking.
And like I said, if you want me to start providing that to you every month, I'll be more than happy to do that. Or if you would like to come and sit down and look at them, I'll be happy to pull every one of those out for you. I mean, I think that's up to the discretion of the board. If you would like to start adding that into the packets every month or every time we receive, I'm just letting you know though that it's a lot. I mean, we have multiple projects going on right now with multiple bids going out and multiple pay applications going out every week. So I don't mind that. Christy probably is not going to mind it, you know, to copy all of that, but you will become inundated with bid tabulation sheets. So,
Well, Continuing Labs gives us about an inch. I don't know why they can't.
and they certainly can. I'm saying that if you want to start making that a part of our monthly packets, you say jump, I'll say how high.
Well, I'd like to see it, but I don't know what the rest of them, we would like to see it.
We would like to see it in public record.
I think that's an issue that we certainly can address and discuss in our workshop, and would be certainly appropriate for us to determine some guidelines to give the staff. So thank you for bringing that point up.
And as far as public records go, some of those documents, when they have been requested, have been provided as public records requests, Mr. Kirkland.
So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do we have a second? All in favor? Anyone opposed is welcome to stay behind.